our Commissioner Thomas in our invocation for all about a pledge of allegiance. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come today. We just ask you to just continue to bless us. We ask you to be with leaders in Washington, D.C. Just recognize that sometimes government goes the way we like it, sometimes it does, but we still think we have the best system on this earth. We ask you to be with each and every leader there and give them wisdom to make right. So we ask you to bless this meeting, be with us tonight, present, and just now make the best decisions. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. The approval of the agenda, I'd like to request that we continue out to the consent agenda. Would actually be presented with a grant application. That's right.
So we're going to continue that to
next meeting, which will still be their deadline.
Well, what are we doing right now? Just addressing the consent agenda?
Now, this is the whole
agenda. 21st and 2nd.
Yes, have changes?
Yes.
Go ahead, Alan.
Michael, items 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, and 25 from the consent agenda.
Item 14, I've asked we go to the next meeting.
Just reading my notes. I'm okay with the continuance. And also, item 22B, which have been asked by board members of the Wakulla Springs Alliance to pull this item. And we've had requested to place on the agenda to give time for commissioners to better familiarize themselves with this item.
All right, so item 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, and 25 from the consent agenda. Correct. Anything else? Approve them?
Motion to approve. Second motion.
Call for the motion? Aye. 80 citizens in the room.
Mr. Chair, if we would be pulling item 22B is correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Mayor Roberts.
Mayor Rush is not happy tonight to talk about the wetlands orders, of course, and probably will continue for a long time. Some issues in the local newspaper and Wakulla area news that are inaccurate. I don't know if it's deliberate or whether it's purposely to mislead the public on what the wetlands ordinance will do. In the Wakulla news, Mr. Russell had an article in there, and he had several statements, and he'd follow up by saying fact. One of his statements was that Wakulla County has never paid settlements legal fees. Fights lawsuits to pay settlements on behalf of Wakulla. That is not true. Also, in Mr. Haskins' magazine, he says, in the past, taxpayers have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars out of this issue already. That is not true. Mr. Thomas, Mr. Moore, and others have made those statements in the past, and they are not true. The only thing that even comes close to that would be the settlement on what was known as the Log Creek incident. And that issue was initially alleged. It was never adjudicated. It never happened. And gentlemen, if you continue to say that in the future, I'm going to have to call you a liar. Okay. Well, that was fast. The only other thing I want to mention here is on the agenda this evening, Mr. Thomas has initiate the process, establish a charter review commission. That's way too early. It had to be done for another year or so now. I think that
generations of kids growing up that have yet to really learn the value and the importance of wetlands and marshes and setback lines and all that. And we intend to help the schools and help the people around here learn what the issues are, the biology, the importance of wetlands in fish, wildlife, oysters, and all that sort of thing. And if you didn't do what you're doing, it would just be another ho-hum thing. So I want to say there's a silver lining on this thing, and I don't really want to see it get nasty, There's some of this stuff that's already starting to heat up, and I'm tempted. I've been fighting developers and real estate people for 40 years. And I have to say, an interesting thing happened. I happened to be going through my papers, and I found a manuscript that I wrote 40 years ago in 1973. It was called The Passing of Panacea. It didn't have an end, but the battles that were going on, the word-for-word conflict hasn't changed hardly at all, except that we have lost wetlands, and we have lost fishing, and we have lost white shrimp, and we have lost oysters, and we have lost all sorts of things. In any case, you helped motivate me to bring out this book, which I'm working on day and night to get this thing out to a publisher, presently called The Panacea Prophecy, because fishermen and everybody were proposing or prophesizing back in those days that was what was going to happen. And another thing I want to say thank you for is that this has also motivated me to bring out my books. Now, I have to tell you, my wife passed away. I've been in a funk and that sort of thing, and it's been a kind of depressing thing. So anyway, partly in memory of Ann Rudlow, this is our new poster. We're going to be putting up possibly billboards. I don't know what we're going to be doing, but this is on the value of wetlands. This is a picture of Ann and me standing in our swamp that we own, that we bought, and we would never touch and destroy. So that's in its own right, that could be a good thing. I would hope that you would allow people to vote on this issue, and we don't have to go ahead and do this referendum and, stomp over everybody and have to make the issue, because it tends to get political when that happens, and so did this and that and the other, and I'm not going to vote for him or whatever. That's not really going to be very helpful in the end. What we need to do is bring the issue up. So I want to say thanks again. I don't want to see another government shutdown, another Washington, D.C., another Middle East situation, or anything else like that. I hope we can get through this wetland thing in a civilized fashion. We obviously have big differences of opinion, but let's try to be civilized about it. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. It appears to me that from what some of the commissioners have been saying in the past, that you are very concerned about the duplication of efforts on the local level between your county here and my county here and the state. You've been saying that the state does certain things that the local government presently does, and then if you don't do it, it would save the county considerable money. Certainly it would reduce your county's budget if you cut out a lot of the present activities. So I'd like to go through that and tell you about some ways where you could save money. I should give you the caveat that I don't necessarily think that you should do all these things, but you could. What about the Sheriff's Department? We could turn that over to the Florida Department of Corrections and the Florida State Police. They certainly have the manpower, equipment, and knowledge to do law enforcement here. And that's one of your major expenditures out of the county's budget. But why not? Because I believe we are doing it locally, because citizens have better accessibility to the services when it's local. Local law enforcement officers have better familiarity with local conditions. Local services are more available, not competing with priorities with other counties. It is more efficient to do local and certainly saves time when someone needs service. And you don't have to compete with your personnel going to other counties. In summary,
you want local services done locally because of accessibility, familiarity, availability, efficiency, ease, and convenience to our citizens. Other local functions that we could turn over the state are public planning and P&Z, planning and zoning. We could turn that over to the Department of Community Planning and Development. Public Works could be turned over to the Florida Department of Transportation. Legal services to the Florida Department of Attorney General. We could turn our local library over to the Division of Library and Information Services. We could turn our veterans over to the Florida Department of Veterans Affairs. We could turn our health department over to the Florida Department of Care Administration. And we could to the Florida Department of Revenue and Florida Highway Safety and Motor. We don't do that because why? We want local accessibility, familiarity, availability, efficiency, ease, and convenience for our citizens. So why is wetlands so different? As far as I can see, the same reasons apply to wetlands. Unless you don't want any wetlands protection, you just want to get rid of it. And I think Commissioner Thomas in his letter to the paper just
while they're doing this.
Late a little earlier. 40. Go ahead, Ms. Peck.
Okay. Very quickly, freedom of speech, First Amendment. We have the right to say what we want to say. We have that right under our Constitution. It's kind of like property rights. You have the right to do whatever you want to do on your property. It's your property. But freedom of speech ends when you want to say something that hurts someone. And property rights end when you want to do something that hurts someone. And that's the point about wetlands and all those regulations on your property. But now here's the main message. Let's just use a little sense here. I'm in a family, and my family wants to go to the beach. Where are they going to go? Let's go to Wakulla County. And they get down to Mashadan, and they look and see that they can't go swimming because it's a health hazard. There's bacteria. There's poop in the water that makes it dangerous, health-wise, for them to get in the water. If you're a family, are you going to come down here and go to the beach? Are you going to want to eat oysters from water that has poop in it several times a year to the point the state has to say, this is really dangerous water, don't go in it? If we use common sense, I think you would think a whole lot about what you're doing with the wetlands, because gutting the wetlands will do nothing but make these situations worse. Florida has a flood map. I think Wakulla County is making Florida just a leader in the flood map because of its flooding problems. Flood insurance is about to go up. If you're a family looking for a home, do you want to look for a home in a county that's known for its flood, that's facing high insurance rates? No, you don't want to do that. So if you use common sense, I would hope that you would turn your priorities away from gutting the wetlands bill and keeping the wetlands bill that makes these things better rather than worse, and look for compromise, because I believe there's a real compromise here. You sit down, you talk about variances, and you talk about people who held property for a long time. Surely, to goodness, you can sit down and come up with a compromise that won't force all of this strife we're all going through about the wetlands. If not, just take this wetlands thing away, or at least put this wetlands issue on the ballot and see what the people you're supposed to represent think about it. They don't want you messing with the wetlands. And if you use your heads, you don't want to make the water worse. You don't want to drive away tourists. You don't want to drive away vacationers. You don't want to drive away homeowners. You don't want to do that to this county. And you're going in the direction that leaves us in a state of disaster.
Good evening, Commissioners. James Hennessy from Spring Creek. I would like to put a simple question to the Commissioners this evening. How come there's no smoking allowed in this room? Why don't the individual rights of smokers trump those of non-smokers? At one time they did, in the workplace, restaurants, hospitals, everywhere. The answer is, now we know better. Once the evidence started to come in about the health consequences of smoking, cigarette companies responded first with total denial and then bitsy measures like filters, mini buffers, if you will. As the evidence became more compelling, actual buffer zones began to be created in most buildings, called smoking areas or smoking porches, to protect non-smokers. That was not a sufficient buffer, and smoking then was moved outside. Later, in many places like hospitals and universities, like FSU, they made a 25, 50, or 75-foot buffer away from buildings where you could smoke. Now I believe FSU and many facilities do not allow smoking anywhere on their campuses. Does this infringe on the rights of smokers? Yes. But that has come to be seen as less of an evil than secondhand smoke is to others. But why did this take so long to happen? In part because of the resistance of cigarette corporations and their lobbyists, but also because one had to see the evidence built over time. It took time for the cumulative effects to degrade an individual's health. It does not happen overnight. Body organs and tissues can take a lot of abuse before failing. Wetlands are similar to organs like our lungs, liver, kidneys, in that they are organic systems that absorb and remove impurities, and in their case from the ecosystem, through plants, soils, and creatures of all sizes. But just like organs, they function better if they are not overwhelmed with impurities. Buffer zones do that. While I am glad that some commissioners have vowed that they would never allow building in wetlands, that is a bit like saying that I would not let another person blow smoke directly into your lungs. We need more protection than that. The more natural land around a wetland, the more filtering occurs before reaching the wetlands, and by extension our water bodies that we've already heard about the pollution of. And 35 feet, the variance we're talking about is about from this desk to that desk. It's not really so much. With our current buffers, we still have beach closings, erosion, and flooding. Why in the world would we lessen them? Our cars have fuel, air, and oil filters. We have filters for our home AC systems. Do you ever go in and ask for the least effective filter? For wetlands, that would be a 0-foot buffer. You would never ask a doctor for the least effective treatment or medicine. Let's not opt for the least effective protection for our Wakulla environment. As with our bodies, harm to our environment occurs gradually, and if we don't protect it now, by the time we realize the mistake, it'll probably be too late. Yes?
Chuck, yes. 112 Lake Ellen Circle. I guess wetlands have been covered fairly well tonight, so I just wanted to comment on, we recently had an event that affects my life, golf course closed.
presentation is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Kathy, Bill.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to this issue. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and our color for the month is purple. We have a event coming up the 23rd. I hope that some of you can attend, or all of you can attend. It is First Baptist Church. That is a Wednesday at noon. We will have a speaker. She'll be speaking. She is a survivor speaker. Lunch will be served, and we do this every year to bring awareness to the community for domestic violence. And then the proclamation will be is on the agenda to declare Wakulla County a no-tolerance zone for domestic violence.
It's on the consent agenda. I'll read it real quickly, okay?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Whereas domestic violence is epidemic in our nation, state, and county, resulting in thousands of battered victims, traumatized children, and broken families each year, crossing all economic, racial, and social barriers. Whereas the children in violent homes are also in danger of victimization and are more likely to succumb to drug abuse, truancy, and emotional disturbances, and are likely to exhibit violent and unlawful behavior in later life than children raised in abuse-free homes. And whereas domestic violence is both a violation of an individual's privacy, security, and humanity, it is a crime which impacts society as a whole, and we conclude that perpetrators of domestic violence must be held accountable for their actions. And whereas we ask that all citizens join together to declare Wakulla County a zero-tolerance zone for domestic violence. Further, we ask our citizens to work with established agencies and individuals to provide women and children safety, which theirs by right. Now, therefore, resolve, we, Board County Commissioner, Wakulla County, Crawford, Florida, hereby proclaim the month of October 2013 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, Wakulla County, to increase public awareness.
Thank you so much. And I have worked for Refuge House for 16 years, always in this county. I opened the program up down here, and I want to say the County Commission has always been extremely supportive of this issue, and I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Motion on the modified consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Second. Any more discussion? Call for the motion.
Aye.
David, item 8, please. Consent.
I make a motion to approve.
Second. Motion and a second. Any citizens? In effect?
Dan Peck, 2481 Sturf Road. There's a time-honored game in Wakulla County that I've seen over the years, and for county government to keep extending contracts for companies that has people in it, I guess, that they just feel comfortable with and want to do business with. And this company here has been the beneficiary of a lot of extended contracts called no-bid contracts that just keep on going and keep on going and keep on giving. I'd like to ask you to think of the families in this county who are trying to pay a mortgage, who are trying to buy their kids clothes for school, who are trying to get food on the table that's decent food, who are just trying to make ends meet. And do you think you could look them in the face and say, we think it's a really good way to do government business to not put out any bids for any contracts for this work, to just keep on giving money to this company because, hey, we like them? Is that the best way to do business? And clearly the answer is no. You wouldn't know if you got a better deal because you haven't looked. Right now, this contract says this company, which has been at the center of controversy for no-bid contracts that forced the resignation of a former county administrator. This company, you're willing to give them $4,200 a month, $50,400 a year, for them to do work that they can do remotely. I I bet you could hire somebody full-time in this county to sit in the county office and do all the IT work and be right there in person to answer any call with hands on the deal. But instead, you're willing to just keep on extending a contract without bidding it. You sit and wring your hands and say this county doesn't have any money, not enough money to give employees raises, but somehow you've got money that you can give to people who don't necessarily look like they need it, or to hand out contracts to people without looking for the best deal, for the best expenditure of their dollar, not your dollar, but the family's dollars that are all too scarce right now. I think the people of this county deserve better government than this.
Question by board member?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, when was the last time we bid out this contract,
2011.
and how many people, companies bid on that?
There were two companies that responded. One was out of Orlando, and then this company.
So it's 2 years ago. And the term was 1 year and
2 years, and with two 1-year extensions. 2-year contract with two 1-year extensions.
Okay, so this is the
First 1 year.
First 1-year extension.
okay.
And also, this was the other bidder was considerably higher. Therefore, that's another reason why we did.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Basically, and what you were saying is that we don't bid on this, but I had 3 different companies that I have worked with, and I asked each of them privately if they would like to have a shot at this contract, and they had no desire to bid on it.
Yes, please. Other departments in our county have their own IT. In fact, some departments, I'm told, have more than one, maybe 3. How does that work for them, and should we look at that and see if it could work for us?
Constitutionals.
Yes.
They're, the other 2 constitutionals I'm aware of that have their IT folks, court system, and the sheriff's office, and realize they both have very complicated IT systems, as well as at $50,400 for everything that you get out of this is as good as for that. But the reason they have them is they have much more complex IT departments than what we have. That's the reason they have a lot of different softwares that they deal with, dispatch and all of those, all that counting. And this is a pretty much generic contract. We've looked at the possibility of hiring an IT person and or consolidating IT, and we're still working on that. That's something. Next time we get ready to bid this out, we're going to explore every year. But when I first came here, that was one of the first things that we see if we could do it internally with our existing folks, and there was just no way we had that time to work.
So then I would encourage anyone hearing this discussion, if they have a company, to come forward and get ready to submit a bid. Well, we have the same situation occurring in the bidding of our housing projects, constructions, and we don't see local people coming to the forefront.
Motion? Aye. Opposed? I vote. David, item 10, please.
Yes, this agenda item requests final approval of the final bid tabulation for our CDBG program housing rehabilitation project. The CDBG is a federal program that provides funding for housing community development. We bid these projects were bid out, and the attached award of recipients and also the contractors that were awarded attached.
Howard, you want to ask questions about it?
I really want to make a statement
Go ahead.
to the contractors out there. That, my understanding, we had no local contractors bidding jobs, is that correct? And so there's something wrong with this picture.
I talked to a couple of my buddies that are contractors. The problem with this, and it's just inherent in the way the program is set up, is you have to have so much cash out of pocket to carry. You have to have a lot of money hanging out there that you're not getting paid for. It's not like when you build a house with a bank, you get a draw quickly. It's the federal government, and it unfortunately works a little slower. So nobody's willing to have that much money hanging out there, or a lot of people just don't have it to hang out there. A lot of people don't have 100 grand sitting in the bank that they're willing to have out on the street for 4 or 5 months waiting on a check. So I think that's one of the bigger companies.
So yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Yes, sir, Commissioner.
How you doing?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Good, good. So, I look at the contractors that have submitted, and apparently won bids now, and they seem like contractors that you see every day in Leon County. It doesn't seem like huge firms.
Well, just to piggyback off of what Chairman Merritt did say, the biggest issue is that this is a federal program, and 24 CFR Part 8536 prohibits the local government from including a local preference. And so you cannot include a local preference in the bid documents to cater to local contractors. It's unlike the SHIP program. The SHIP program is a state program, and you can include a local preference. The county does have a local preference ordinance on the books, and that's why if we're concerned with getting local contractors involved, the SHIP program would be the way to go, because that local ordinance is invoked. However, with the federal program, it has to be open to anyone that wants to apply.
So on the SHIP program, we are seeing local contractors?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, the last SHIP jobs, no one from out of town could possibly win because there's such a steep local preference.
And is there any suggestion of how the situation with Chairman Merritt brings up can be?
As it relates to floating the funds, well, typically that's why we only allow two jobs per contractor unless they can demonstrate their ability to do so. We know the contractors that work on these jobs are very small, and so we wanted to spread the wealth, and so that's why the number is relatively low. So, we want the contractors. There's no way the federal government is going to give funds and then allow them to do the job, and then hopefully they'll get the job done in accordance with the work write-up. They have to have the ability to at least float some level of funds. We do have control over the disbursement process to some extent. However, we're doing it in 4 draws. And so, you complete a certain percentage of the job, we'll get reimbursement, give you your money back, you finish the rest of the job.
Somewhat. I mean, it's not as quick as a bank would give you a call because it's not local, but a lot of guys just don't have local guys.
So I'm still concerned why. I understand there's no local preference, but I'm still concerned, especially in this economy, we don't have local contractors stepping up. That was my concern.
Thank you.
All for motion?
Aye.
All opposed? We didn't get a motion. First, we need a motion. Katie?
I make a motion. Second.
Motion and a second. All for motion?
Aye.
All right, David. Item 12.
Item number 12. This item requests board approval, rock landing, boat ramp, submerged lands lease.
I make a motion to approve.
Second. Howard?
Yes, thank you. So, this is the boat ramp and dock that we built, and we changed the height of in order to accommodate a large charter boat that was supposed to be coming here and changing the complexion of Panacea. And how many slips do we have rented? Did we get the charter boat? Are there any boats that are docked at our dock that are not paying rent?
Yes, there's 3.
we are addressing that issue.
That they will be, we're going through the process right now to have those boats sold, outlined in the slip. $5 right now.
Thank you.
Since Howard brought it up, David, what's the problem with? I assume a grant paid for this.
Paid for it. I don't know. It's just right now. It's not. We haven't had any inquiries at all.
Basically, you've got the economy, and the economy for large boats. You go out, you can catch 2 grouper, maybe 2 redfish. You spend $400 on gas. The people that have got the big boats are dropping them off.
This is for commercial.
Yeah, but
Commercial guys are hurting.
but we would rent to anybody. We'd rent to a canoe if he wanted to come into that spot.
Well, it has to. You have to rent it to a commercial fishing boat, right?
Commercial, we can't
That's
compete
probably-
with. We can't compete with Rockland. Their problem.
Thank you.
Discussion.
I have a question about that. You say that we can't rent it to anybody who shows up?
Grant specifies to be commercial.
Who determines commercial?
License.
Well, we have individual fishermen around town that are commercial fishermen, and they have a 20-foot boat.
Most of them want to pull it out of the water.
Yeah, I know, but so a person who has a commercial fishing license, if he's got a canoe, he can still rent the space.
Boat has to be.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out where we
All
are.
the high dock to sling oysters up on.
Okay. I'm just trying to find out where we are.
Hey, can we get a motion on this item?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Really? So I did it right that time. All right. Any more discussion? All for the motion?
Aye.
Request board approval of proposed resolution and budget amendment accepting funding from the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity for a community technical.
Motion on this item?
Motion to approve. Second.
Howard?
Okay, so we went over this during our pre-meeting conference, but could you encapsulate again what this money is going to be spent for?
Lou will take that one.
Yes, Commissioners. We're going to be looking at the county's community rating system, which is the system that governs how we get credit for flood protection. So we're going to look at that system in a comprehensive manner to try and get some breaks on people who pay flood insurance. We're going to be looking at things ranging from getting information to the public to some ordinances that the board can consider for additional regulations that we could get credit for. But this will let the board see what we can do to try and improve our community rating score to try and get a better rate on flood insurance for people who are affected by that in the county.
Translate even further. You do certain things, FEMA will give you a certain percentage discount off everybody's flood insurance in the county.
That's it.
Certain things you can do, certain ordinances and public information things that maybe we are not doing that will give a discount countywide for flood insurance.
That's good. And so, at the same time we're doing this, if we eliminate our local wetlands protections that we have in place, would that reduce or cause the potential for increase in our flood insurance rates?
Potentially, and that's one of the things we want to look at to see what those effects of things like that will be.
I called FEMA about that, Howard, and asked.
Called
CRS, I'm sorry. Short answer is no, it wouldn't affect it if we got rid of it, because we're not getting credit for it now. Now, is there a potential that we could get some credit for it? Yes, but we're not getting that credit now. I talked to the woman from CRS about it. The credit that we would get is based on how many acres of wetlands are taken out of potential flooding. And you can't count the acreage that's subject to a variance. So in other words, you can only count the first 35 feet, and you can't count federal wetlands, you can't count whatever. So the percentage of wetlands, say we protect 100 acres of that 35-foot untouchable area, compared to 300,000 acres, that it would be very small. That was my understanding.
And that's one of the problems of each one of us speaking individually with the person on the phone, as opposed to having the people in the room, us asking questions directly and receiving that information as a unit. But it seems to be intuitive that if we lessen our wetlands, we are certainly not helping our cause of reducing our flood insurance. That seems obvious.
Call for the motion.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Agenda item number 25. This agenda item requests board approval of a letter of support to the Florida Department of Agriculture for the TCC Wakulla Environmental Institute Oyster Aquaculture Certificate Program on sovereign submerged lands leased to WEI, which is the Wakulla Environmental Institute.
I make a motion to approve.
Second. This basically is a letter of support saying that the board really likes oysters.
Really likes oysters, and we all for TCC moving forward with their program.
BoCC has a program. They have gotten state approval for the first time ever to use the entire water column down at Spring Creek, whereas previously the oysters had to be more or less 6 inches off the bottom, and that's as far as they could be, and they picked up all the bacteria and critters that ate the oysters. But now with the help of TCC and the people in Spring Creek, they can use the entire water column. So they're doing that, and if this thing works the way that they hope it'll create a complete new industry in Wakulla.
Basically, they're doing research on pilot testing of growing oysters.
Growing oysters, yes, and it seems to be working very good. Just time will tell, but all of a sudden, instead of just having a cage of oysters on the bottom, now they can have cage after cage occupying the same space, but in the water column. It prevents the parasite. It's really, to me, it's very exciting. It has great possibilities. And if it works, and I hope it does, it'll be surprising that it's taken this long for us to get to this point.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the oyster fishermen and women out there are aware of this program, that the first class has 10 students in it. First class indicates that there are going to be, or it's anticipated, more than one class, and I just would urge them to look into that. It might be a very useful option for them.
Motion.
Aye.
Passed. Louis, you going to handle the...
Yep, Louis, tab 17.
Yes, this next item is a request to approve the filing of an application to close and abandon a portion of Division Street in Panacea North and South Subdivision, and to advertise said road closing application for the next practical public hearing. The applicant owns the lots on either side of the roadway segment that is proposed for abandonment. It's approximately 110 feet long of Division Street, which has never been developed. The question that concerns staff is who owns the parcel directly to the east of this,
touching the water.
which is touching the water, and there's a question of that. So that is staff's concern with this. The applicant's agent is available tonight to answer any questions that you have.
Question for Heather. You told me earlier that there's an ongoing... Well, we have a quiet title set on that piece of land that touches the bay. Is that correct?
According to the court docket that we were able to pull up, there was a quiet title suit back in 2008, maybe. But it doesn't appear, at least from the documents that we were able to get, that it was resolved. It looked like it was voluntarily dismissed without prejudice, and so those competing claims appear to still be out there.
In my opinion, we knew that we didn't own that. That's up to the water. I don't know. But we don't know that. So that gets resolved.
Charles McMurray. I represent the owner of the land, Dr. Snyder. Your attorney's correct. There was a lawsuit. We filed it to quiet title. Dr. Snyder did back in 2008. And the issue was this. Does that piece of land go to the water? And that was why we filed the lawsuit. There was a hearing in front of Judge Sauls, who was the circuit judge at the time. He made a finding, and there's an order in place that I gave copies of that says that the roadway never went to the water. So that issue was resolved. The roadway was never dedicated to the county. It was just on one of these plat maps from like 1800 or something. And the person that actually owned that land, that had a house there and lived on it back in the 20s, was Mr. Gibson, Hutch Gibson. And when he died, his estate sold it to the current owner in about 1970. They've owned it ever since. And the roadway that's shown on the plat map that goes in there just goes in and accesses land on either side of his property, and there wouldn't be any reason that he would want that. That's why he wanted it closed. I mean, if he wanted to ever develop that property and sell lots off, he'd just sell them off with frontage on the roadway on Clark Drive. He wouldn't need just a roadway going into it. So that was the reason for it. And back at the time that we tried to do the quiet title suit, it got too expensive, and Dr. Snyder said, well, just forget about it. It doesn't matter. I mean, the property was fenced off since the 20s anyway, so why bother? But I talked to him recently, and I said maybe we could go back and do it and give them a piece of property, county that is, over next to the park, because he owns some waterfront property next to the park there, next to Woolly Park, that's contiguous. So I suggested, well, maybe we give them that property, and then we sort of trade it.
Your client get a quick claim offer of the property?
He bought the property on a warranty deed back in about 1970 from the man that had owned it and been one of the developers in there since the 20s.
I mean, is he the original owner platted the property?
No, that probably was somebody back in the 1800s.
What claim do we have?
Yeah, and this is all just from the court docket, but it looked like there was a quit claim dated October 22nd, 2008 from Ray Stancy, your client, and then the county then got a competing from a different A.B. Taff and Sons. And all this took place in 08.
Unless that person's an heir, right? That's why I was asking.
Yeah, it's really kind of crazy situation there.
My opinion on this is we need to settle who is the actual owner of that space that goes to the bay. Once we establish that, then I think we can act on the other. My opinion is if we once we establish that, I'd just like to sell that to the doctor. I don't see any reason, with all due respect, I don't see any reason to give him that. I think he has a very good interest in buying it. I would say we'd hope we'd be reasonable, but I'm not in the habit of giving land away. But first, before we can go to that point, we got to find out who owns that between there and the bay. As far as the swap, if that were good land we were swapping for, I'd like to swap, but that's mostly marsh. The land that's contiguous to the Woolly Park, most all of that is marsh. I looked at that, and I can't see any place that you could even use anything.
Well, that's the purpose of wetlands, remember?
Well, we got them where we own them or not, so it's not anything that I would, yeah. But I think we first ought to find out who owns that.
Well, here's the thing, Mr. Moore. That Dr. Snyder would never buy that piece of land there, because if it was a roadway, he would use it just to access his property. That would be the only use for it anyway. Why would he buy a road in his property?
To put his other piece on both sides. Once he's got a piece on both sides of it, if he owns the center, now he's got contiguous property on 3 lots.
Well, no, he has a lot more lots than that in there. That roadway goes in and basically provides access to the way those lots are platted, the ones on the road and the ones on the water. So actually, if the roadway was closed, he wouldn't have access to the ones on the water that he owns. He just wants to close it off because he doesn't have any plans on using it. He wouldn't want a roadway in there in the first place.
It doesn't bother me. I just don't think we should give it to him.
Can we just die without a motion?
I'd like to clarify one thing. The two deeds that you say are competing with each other, does that address the to be closed portion?
No. It addressed that. My understanding, and this is all I could get from the court docket,
out there, and that has never gone through the court system, that it's unclear who owns the piece to the east of the 2B. Correct.
I'm confused. Like, the only piece of property that was ever in contention was the part that's shown as a roadway. Because when yeah, sure.
Understand it from what we were talking about earlier, the area to the east of that, we don't really know who owns it.
Well, no, the area to the east, if you're talking about on the water, that belongs to Dr. Snyder. That wasn't what the quitclaim deed was about. The quitclaim deed was about the actual roadway.
But the part that's not in yellow, that's just shown between those two lots?
Debatable.
That's the part that's the part I was mentioning. We don't know who owns that.
I would make a motion that we continue until we find out who owns that property to the water. We don't need to be the ones who...
No, I mean, this is under the county's road closing policy, they have to get permission to file the application, and you can either grant that or deny that. I mean, they can always reapply for that. It doesn't...
It's not our business to determine who owns that. I would say the person who's wanting the road closed, if they want that road closed, which I'm agreeable to, finds out who solves the problem on who owns that. If they own it themselves, then we will then go into phase 2 and see what we want to do with that other portion of when we allow closure. But my tendency is that I'll be glad to sell it.
Motion is number 2, not approve filed application to close down.
Can I ask for clarification on this?
I'll second that.
Okay, I want to understand it so that I don't throw any, come back with any additional information. Assuming, for argument's sake, that the applicant says, okay, the county owns the road. What he's here for is to have them close it. He's basically saying, okay, the county owns the road because it's shown on a plat map. I'm asking the county to close it. So there isn't an issue in his mind of who owns it.
Big difference in my mind if that road goes to the bay or not.
But we already had a court hearing on that, and the court determined that it doesn't go to the bay. So therefore, that's not an issue.
If we close the road, if we allow the road to be closed, then we have blocked ourselves from the water. And I don't want to block ourselves from the water. I want to keep our water access open until we figure out who owns it, and then we'll deal with closing the road. Because if we close the road now, and let's say if we just close the road, then the property, this is the way it works, I believe. If we close the road now, the property owner on either side of that road will inherit the property. That means Dr. Snyder would then inherit that piece of property to be closed.
Right.
Then that blocks us from the bay, and our access to the bay is worth nothing.
But you don't have an access to that. That's what I'm trying to say. We went...
Prevail in court, we will.
We already went to court. Is what I'm trying to say. We went to court, we had a hearing, it's over. There was no appeal.
I would just like to say that I'm for the land swap if we can determine that we do not own that other piece in question. If we can prove that that conclusive, and we do not have legal access there, I'm for the land swap, but I agree with these guys that we have to determine. We have to know whether Dr. Snyder owns that or who owns that, so we're not just giving away access to the bay with that. It sounds like we have two deeds out there.
Well, maybe I
went
get
to court.
Let's
Yeah.
let the other citizens speak.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I'll get with your attorney about it.
Thank you.
All right,
Chuck Hess?
Chuck Hess, 112 Lake Ellen Circle. I just want to make sure you recognize that having access to our waterways is very important, and if you're going to close this road, if it's access to the bay, we shouldn't be doing it. Thank you.
Chuck agreed with us? I almost say the same thing. If there's any way that can give access to the bay, you should not give that road away. If you can buy the other piece or get the other piece donated. If we talking about ecotourism, we talking about fishing and hunting here, those access to waterways are valuable. Thank you.
I understand the property seeking attention may
I think we need to be clear who owns it.
Can I ask, I'd like to ask staff, the attorney, if this was not seconded and did not get voted on, this owner of the property adjoining Division Road be able to come back at a later date and request the same request from the board? So that being the case, I don't see where there's any need to table and continue. I think that
We didn't know the motion.
The motion is actually
Not a-
to deny it.
that was this.
On that thought, if we just tabled it and we didn't deny it, can they come back without applying for a second application?
Well, they haven't applied yet to close it.
No cost in our process at this point, until this is approved.
Without getting too involved in this, this is one of those unrecorded subdivisions, kind of like whatever. They could also sue for quiet title on that piece of land, right?
We already did that. I just want to clarify, we paid the $500-something fee to do this, so obviously it would be preferable to us if you table it and we can come back with more information rather than have to reapply.
I agree with tabling it, but I don't want to take any more of your money, and if we can,
Y'all took $500 from him?
Yeah, we haven't cashed the check yet. That's
Money back?
yes. So that would be to pay for the advertising if it went on to the next step.
yeah, I make a motion, we refund the man's money.
Got the motion second. More discussion? All for the motion?
Please excuse me, other than the fact, we like to work with your doctor,
Absolutely.
once we find out who owns the land, but we do not, I'm speaking for myself, I don't want to be giveaway to be closed, because there is value of going to the water. If it were me and I picked up to be closed, then that'd be great, because I have access to the water. I've just combined 2 lots into 3, so it's really good. I think we've got to find out who owns legally that.
To reiterate, the motion is do not approve filing an application to close the North subdivision and give applicant the money back. After that, any more discussion? All for the motion?
Aye.
All right, David.
Mr. Greg James, our finance director, is going to handle this next agenda item.
Site, they call it.
This is a request to have the board approve a line of credit which would be reserved, and I need to underline that and highlight that, reserved for emergency and disaster relief use only. There's a couple one modification that needs to be made when we discuss this with the audit committee members to make sure that all of the members were on board with this thought. On page 2 of the agenda item, it says at no time would staff have the authority to use the line of credit without authorization from the board. In the future, if an emergency arises, and we would change that to say if a locally declared emergency arises, so the board would have to declare that an emergency exists before we could even consider coming back to the board to get approval to draw down on the line of credit.
Natural disaster, not a financial.
Correct. Correct. And the only reason for this is outlined in the agenda item is if a catastrophic storm hits at the wrong time of the year, and typically during hurricane season, it's the period of time when we have the least amount of cash on hand. We could go through all of our cash reserves, whether we're at fund balance or not, and not have sufficient funds to pay payroll and operating expenses. And so this is only in the event that a sizable storm hits. For example, the one back in 2001, Tropical Storm Helene, it cost the county, although they got reimbursed eventually, we had to put out $3 million. We have $1.2 million in the general fund right now. So that's just the illustration of getting this lined up in advance so that if anything happened, we would be able to react quickly with board approval.
I guess I asked a question earlier.
Sure.
Why did it take us so long to get to this point? Because this is just good business.
Correct.
Good answer.
I don't have the answer for why it hasn't been recommended before.
Make a motion.
I make a motion, we approve opening the line of credit with Ameris Bank and authorize the chairman and clerk to sign upon legal review.
And the legal review, just a clarification, we didn't want to bother getting the county attorney involved with reviewing an agreement, getting the bank's attorneys involved in reviewing an agreement if you guys were going to nix the idea right away. And so now that you have approved the concept, now the attorney and the bank will work out the language on the agreement itself.
Second.
That will come back to the board.
I second it.
Yes.
Okay.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion?
Yes. I have a question regarding our fund balance policy. I understand that the term of this proposed loan would be for a 12-month term, and our fund balance policy says that any fund that we have that contains debt or is secured by debt, we would have to maintain 12 months worth of debt service in that fund.
Correct.
So if this is a 12-month term, we have a $2 million loan, that tells me that we have to maintain $2 million in our fund balance in order to meet our policy.
Incorrect. You have zero debt on the books. You have a line of credit.
But as soon as you execute, as soon as you take
That's
that
correct.
debt, we would have to immediately set up a sinking fund as described in the agenda, and to meet our fund balance policy, we would have to place an equal amount of 1 year's worth of debt service.
Correct.
This is going to be, if we execute it, if we just approve it and we never use it, it's consistent with our fund balance policy. If we pull the money out and we're unable to put an equal amount, it's going to be inconsistent with
And
our
I would
fund
add one thing, though. We probably need to modify our fund balance policy to deal with this emergency situation. For example, you have another policy, your budget. When an emergency disaster is declared, the budget gets thrown out the window. And if we had to spend $4 million tomorrow, we don't look at whether or not there's budget or not. It's an emergency exists, you spend what needs to be spent, and you get that money back from FEMA once it was declared. And so there are circumstances that the traditional policies that you have in place are for ordinary operating.
extreme circumstance.
And this would be an extreme circumstance, and although the fund balance policy doesn't discuss that, we probably need to amend the fund balance policy to state that we wouldn't need that set aside if it's we're borrowing for an emergency.
This were ever used, it'd only be used for things that we were reasonably sure we were going to get reimbursed for. So you do
Right.
disaster cleanup to get the roads open. FEMA pays you back for that, but had to, we could use this line of credit to pay for it to get the work done while we're waiting to get reimbursed. I understand your point.
I understand it makes things easier, but I My personal preference is we not go deeper into debt, especially on an unknown emergency. My preference, if the emergency arises, then we deal with it at that time.
Let me be clear. I'm not suggesting this so that it's easier. We would only borrow this if we simply did not have the cash on hand.
And the board approved it.
And the board approved it. We simply would only draw down this line of credit if we simply didn't have the cash needed to address all of the emergency circumstances.
We have to approve that. I understand. I would just like to eliminate the safety net. That way, we're tighter on making sure that we're moving our fund balances in the direction they need to go in. If we know we have that safety net, it'd be a lot easier to draw down fund balances in other areas because we know emergency comes, we can dip into this. And to me, it's just personal preference. I love you guys no matter how you vote, but I'm going to oppose this.
Okay. Any more discussion? All for the motion? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
That's 4-1. David? You want to let...
David Moody is going to take this one as TDC. David, this agenda item requests board approval of the Tourist Development Council employment contract between Mr. Sam Martin and Wakulla County. David Moody is here as well as Mr. Martin.
Is there a motion on this item?
I move to approve.
I second.
Motion and a second. Y'all have any questions of the director?
I've already found out basically a lot of
Chairman,
things.
I'm sorry.
Commissioners and Administrator Edwards, I just wanted to let y'all know that we've been working really hard to secure this position, and we have selected Mr. Sam Martin, and he's with us tonight for the position of the Director of the Tourist Development Council, and we're real excited with his resume and what he's going to bring to our county, and I just want him to get up and meet you all tonight.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet all of you. Thank you for the opportunity to work with you and citizens of Wakulla County to move tourism forward. I think we have a lot of things we can do. I'm really excited about this. And I love the outdoors. I've always done outdoors things, and I think this is a wonderful place to do it. So, and I look forward to meeting all of you individually and getting to know you better.
At the Hickman's already.
Pardon?
You've already met the Hickman's?
No, I don't think so. Oh, yes, yes. Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Y'all have any questions for the...
I met him earlier, and basically, part of my approval is you dance a lot. I understand that you dance.
My reputation is preceding me.
That's right. The senior center needs Friday dancers. We need men. So
I'll be there sometime.
I would like to ask you to come to the senior center at 11 a.m. on Friday.
I will do that.
On some Fridays.
I will do that. I promise I will do that.
The women would love to see you.
Now don't let Jerry pull the wool over your eyes either. I heard him talking to a sheriff's department employee one time. Y'all just bring some prisoners or somebody over there to the senior center and dance. Jerry, they're not going to want to dance with prisoners. He said they don't care.
They don't care. They just want to dance, right? That's right.
Anybody but Jerry.
No sunshine.
That's one of those things where you always have more women than you do men in dancing. And for the guys that can dance, it's heaven, I can tell you.
These women are good dancers.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Welcome aboard.
Thank you and welcome aboard.
Any more discussion, any citizens? All for the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The next agenda item is request board approval to proceed with a plan of action for responding to the U.S. Treasury of proposed Restore Act rules. And Ms. Sheree, short presentation, very brief.
I'm done. The Treasury finally released the rules to implement the Restore Act. They came out September 6th. Responses are due November 5th. The rules help to clarify how we access our funds. We'll have to do it through a grant program, which means any projects that we give to agencies that are non-governmental organizations or outside the BoCC will have to be sub-awards. The rules...
Have to be, please excuse me, you'll have to do that again. Will have to be what kind of awards?
Sub-awards, sub-grants. So, for instance, if we gave someone applied for funds with a project that met the criteria in the Restore Act and it was approved by the board, then that would go to that that entity as a sub-grant, and they would be required to follow all the same rules that we do, and we will have to monitor them for compliance.
Responsible agency, though?
Financially.
Until the final audit is done.
And for ensuring that they maintain their records for 5 years after the project closes. We would have to get access to the funds, and I'm not going by the rules specifically, I'm just going to hit on some high points. We have to develop a 5-year, multi-year plan. That plan has to be very specific with a year-by-year budget showing how much funds we need year by year. Yes, sir. Right. It doesn't matter whether you're a government, private, individual.
You have to follow the private folks also for 5 years.
Right. They have made it a grant program, and they do not distinguish between individuals, organizations, public, private, not-for-profit. It's a grant program. Everybody follows the same rules. The county, and I'm going to speak to the county, what the county has to do. The county's going to have to create a 5-year plan, and it's going to have to be specific to all the projects that we want to fund, whether they're our projects that the county's going to manage, or whether or not they're sub-awards that the board has approved to go to other entities or individuals. That plan has to be specific to the budget. The chairman of the board has to sign off on certifications, basically attesting to the fact that everything in the plan is true, all the projects meet all the qualifications, that the county is in compliance with all the grant rules and environmental laws. Every project, if it's an environmental, will have to follow all the federal and state and any local environmental laws and policies. There's nothing in the rule that speaks to expedited permitting or any of those things that we normally are familiar with these types of projects. That doesn't mean that we're not going to address it in our comments and ask for some kind of expedited permitting.
Does this apply to all the funds?
Yes. To the direct components, which is the counties, and I'm going to speak to Florida, the 23 counties, the parishes in Louisiana, the counties in Texas. It doesn't go to the counties, but the parishes and the counties that are named specifically in the Restore Act, and the states. Pot 2, Pot 1, Pot 2, Pot 3, 4 and 5, they will have to follow the same rules. Right, everybody's a grant. There was no exception for anyone. There is one item that Commissioner Thomas brought to our attention. It's very important. It appears to allow the state to bypass the county and the consortium and go straight to the council, the federal council, or the treasury and apply for funds.
For the Pot 1 funds. They get a state agency.
It's Pot 1, Pot 2, and Pot 3.
So they could reach, what we think is our fund on Pot 1, the state could reach in and grab some of that.
Right, they could go direct to the treasury, the way the preamble of the
Come to us at all.
So it could not even be our project.
It would have to be in our county, and it would have to meet the Restore Act requirements.
So the DEP project they thought was more viable than any one we came up with. They could say, all right, we're going to do Shell Point, $25 million. We're going to go straight to the feds and get the money. That's your project.
Right.
Well, that's, yeah, and it's in the preamble, so there's conflicting words in there, and that's one of the things we got to do. And right, Ralph had actually, Commissioner Thompson had brought that up, and we brought that up at the 23 county court consortium, and we were the only ones he was the only one that had found that. So
Federal Register.
Yes. The biggest thing that we've been doing, and I say we, I mean the 8 counties and the other 13, my counterparts in the other counties, we are looking at the rules section by section, and today I worked on, a side-by-side comparison, exactly, dissecting it section by section and what this means, which will bring back to you on the 21st with comments and concerns for a formal response to the Treasury. But the biggest thing we're looking
that need to be clarified, definitions that need to be clarified. They interchange terms throughout the rule, which makes it very difficult to know if, they've used direct and indirect and programmatic, and it's like, okay, there should be one set of definitions and one set of terms for the rule. I also know that some of the grant circulars that we have to follow also have definitions for indirect and administrative, and so they say we have to follow those, and then they describe them. So, point of clarification, what's the correct definition that we have to follow so that we don't get into an audit and then have to go into a debate with their attorneys and our attorney on what's the definition that we're supposed to use. So, long story short, Wednesday night, the Restore Act Committee is meeting. We are going to go through a detailed presentation of the rule and get citizen input and respond to their questions, come up and start beginning the formal response that I'll come back on the 21st for you to approve that we can submit to the U.S. Treasury by November 6th. So I will be available for questions. If anybody wants to call me or sit down with me, I can go over it with it. You can email me, and I'll be happy to respond and coordinate.
So I'd like to just point out one thing, if I can, and correct me if I'm wrong. The rules also contain some hypothetical situations, number of applicants, and things like that. And she spoke to how intensive the reporting is going to be. And I think under their hypothetical scenario, they came up with about 2.5 people were going to be required, 2.5 full-time people were going to be required just to take care of application and reporting. So once that money starts flowing, unless we've got 3 people that we're going to dedicate to that, we would need personnel to fill those positions.
And that's one of the things, it doesn't say whether or not we can recoup any of our costs to get, established in this program. And that's one of the other questions we have. One part of the rule, it sounds like it's going to be cost reimbursement. Another part of the rule would lead you to think that you can get advance funds. Yes, sir.
So that's a major question of mine. When you brought up the possibility of the sub-grants and the county's liability for years closing out those grants, where does that money come from for the county? That's my question.
Well, if it's a cost reimbursement, they would have to spend those funds and then apply to us to reimburse them. And if they defaulted anywhere along the way on the sub-grant terms and conditions, then the way grants normally work, and I can't speak to this one because this is one part the rule doesn't specifically say, but if you use how normal grants work, they're going to the Treasury would come to the county, and the county would be liable for repaying those funds and then seeking reimbursement of those funds from the entity that we sub-granted to.
Okay, in addition to that question, in the situation where everything ran well, and does the county in a sub-grant situation get administration monies to pay our employees?
That's the tricky part. We are allowed 3% administrative cost. Part of the problem with the rule is the way they define administrative cost, indirect, direct. That's one of the points of clarification that we'll be asking the Treasury, and that would also be a determination that potentially the board may have to decide is if they do sub-award, if they're going to pass that on to the sub-grantee. Another issue is it allows state preference for vendors but no local preference. It also requires that any of our contracting processes be performed pursuant to state laws, which are a little bit different from our local laws. Point of clarification to the Treasury will be, can we have local preference, and can we follow our own procurement laws?
Second motion.
Accepting the report.
Approve staff to move forward seeking the Act Advisory Committee's input, citizens' input, and prepare a response to the proposed rule for board approval at the October 21st, 2013 board meeting. I assume that's... Thank you. Thank you. More discussion?
That's why we have you, Randy.
I
I'd like to thank Cherie. She's put this together and she's done a great job. And the good news is she leads. She sent her presentation out, and about every county's picking that exact presentation up and performing. So she pulled the 23 counties together and talked. So that's a very intense job. So she did a very good job.
All for the motion?
Aye.
All right, agenda item, next agenda item, this item requests board approval of change order number 1 to PV and Sons contract for roadway striping. What we did is we had in our 1-cent sales tax roads this past year, we have needs restriping the roads and a whole bunch of roads, but we were only able to restripe about 6 miles of road this time, but we've got $100,000 every year thereafter. But what we did is we selected the lowest contractor for the road striping based upon C.W. Roberts, PV, and also Capital Asphalt.
Make a motion that we approve change order number 1 to the PV and Sons contract to provide roadway striping in the amount of $86,671.20.
Already done, guys.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any citizen? Any more discussion? All for the motion?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioners, this is to request board direction regarding the Grinders Addition subdivision and the adoption of overlay zoning district regulations for the subdivision. You may recall there were 3 subdivisions that have special zoning restrictions, which it was determined are not consistent with state law. The board gave direction to adopt architectural guidelines for Grinders Addition and to rezone Magnolia Gardens and Wakulla Heights to R1, which would not allow mobile homes in those subdivisions. The persons who originated this whole issue in Grinders Addition did end up locating a mobile home that complies with the zoning restrictions there. So staff is again requesting board direction. We do not recommend moving forward on the architectural guidelines since the couple who that was designed for, they've resolved their issue. So staff is requesting direction. We'd recommend that you probably, to be consistent with the other subdivisions, direct us to rezone Grinders Additions also to R1 single family.
Difference being with Grinders, even with the restrictions, did allow single wide mobile homes.
Yes, they did. In certain areas. The options are laid out in the agenda item.
Nothing, it stays the way it is, right?
If you do nothing, you have a zoning regulation on your books that is in conflict with state law.
Conflict for the last.
I don't know when the state law restrictions were put on. It's been in conflict for some time. And moreover, it is a somewhat hidden zoning regulation in that people, if they pulled up your zoning map online or they're going to look to purchase a piece of property in the subdivision, they're not going to necessarily be able to find the specific restrictions on mobile home age, etc., without actually going to your planning department. I've had people in the past who purchase property believing that it was RMH1 without restrictions, and then surprised when they found the additional restrictions on the property.
Anything we do is going to make somebody mad, but we are now aware as a board that we have conflict within our rules, and this is going to present problems for future purchases of land. So I think that we have to do something.
The question then, if we do something, is do we zone it mobile home, RMH? not allow mobile homes anymore at all? That's the question.
I would recommend the R1 zoning.
They call the people that have a mobile home mad because down
No, they're not, they're already there.
burns down, they can't replace it. You have a lot in there, and you let your kid move a mobile home line.
Well, you could address that, rather than just leaving it open, you could address that the ownership now can stay under the current.
By use.
Pardon?
They would become non-conforming. They'd be allowed to continue until that use was either destroyed or abandoned for a period of 6 months, and then they would have to.
Right, basically, if we go to R1 and somebody's mobile home burned, could they put another mobile home? Could we not make the exception that they could do it?
That was the whole problem that happened before, if I understand.
I think the safe thing to do is currently zoned RMH1. Let's leave it RMH1. Let's remove the zoning restrictions that are in conflict, and then we'd be consistent. And then we haven't changed the zoning at all. Everyone's under the impression it's RMH1. It is RMH1. Let's leave that alone. Let's remove the conflict.
I agree with you, but here's the problem that leads to. You have to deal with it. Is that right now on certain lots you can only put double wide, two. Or whenever we get this approved, now you can now pull in a 1975 single wide for a rental on the same lot that you couldn't. Going into this with the eyes wide open, I said somebody's going to get mad either way, but I think RMH, if we have to do something, I think leaving it RMH and just remove it. The only other thing we could do is do architecture. But in the Griner's edition, special conditions, it allows Lot 6, Block D to have a single wide, but not Lot 8, Block D. See, this is different than Magnolia Gardens.
Yeah, and look, they're in difficult situations. There's also a situation that at the end of Tafflinger, if you're heading down Tafflinger, look to your left, there's a street, and the name of which is somewhat mentioned, but maybe in 2008 or so, the board voted to allow one lot to be zoned for mobile home. And there was information at that time that surrounding landowners said that that was not the intention of this. Well, the person that petitioned for it and got the mobile home designation, that because there was a hardship story associated with it, and I think the board went down the wrong path. Nothing was ever put there. These other property owners, they're wanting that street to, that subdivision, Don Ellen subdivision, be put back the way they thought it was originally. Might be bringing something back to the board on that, but these are all sticky situations.
That's not Griner's edition.
Correct.
Talking about Griner's edition, which is Nelson Road.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that into discussion. The relationship.
I think right around where Mr. Nelson lives, those are already built out anyway, I think. Lowry and all those guys.
I guess my motion would be option number 2.
Is there a second?
Could we, I'll second that.
Could we increase the square footage to
do that with architectural standards.
But some of those lots under the current I think if you want to make it simpler, I guess you I don't know if we want to even touch.
Well, I'm getting concerned about, we've heard a lot of discussion about property rights and things, and now I'm hearing, let's tell them how many square foot we have to put here.
We're telling them that now, though. That's the way the rule reads currently. I think what Joe's trying to do is try to keep it at least consistent as possible with what it is right now.
I'm in agreement with this.
what you're saying, Jim?
It's a no-win situation. It's a bad ordinance that was adopted, and a lot of people bought property around that, and it's a no-win situation.
There's such a mixture of uses in there, whether it be homes or mobile homes or whatever. Regardless of what you do, it's going to make somebody.
Simplified is going to be less square footage than 12. Always.
1,200 square feet.
How about 1,000?
I don't think we want to go down there.
Okay.
Okay, any more discussion? All for the motion?
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. Dr. Kessler's item?
Be Dr. Kessler's item.
This agenda item requests the board to allow citizens to speak at the citizens to be heard portion of the meeting at two separate times, but only once, at either the beginning or at the end of that meeting. Right now, we still have citizens that are under a hardship to get here for a 6 o'clock start meeting. Citizens to be heard start at the beginning. This would allow citizens to have the choice of speaking either at the very beginning of the meeting or at the very end. One of those.
Not both. That was.
But not both.
Howard, I could go along with this if you'd agree to put the second hearing after the county administrator's items and before discussion issues back. We still have our discussion where we feel free to talk how we want to. Not with that. You go along with that?
Yes.
I can support it. Chuck Hess is going to talk 3 minutes. It doesn't matter if Chuck talks at the beginning of the meeting or the end. Talk 3 minutes. No offense, Chuck. You're a good example. You're a universal.
When I initially read this, the concern I had was, the same person that spoke at the beginning speaking at the end, but you're saying someone could
Either or, not both.
Yeah. What I had written at anybody.
You did. I don't have a problem with that.
I have one more variable to throw in there when I ask. Okay, say if someone didn't get here in time to speak at the citizens to be heard, but they spoke at one of the agenda items in the middle, they still have 3 minutes. Would they still be allowed to come at the end for the citizens to be heard? Or?
Yes.
I'm fine with that too, because that Howard's intention was, I think, can't make it to the meeting till. Well, we all agreed to move the meeting to 6 to make it more accommodating for people. I'm not going to bring that up, but anyway, if you couldn't make it to the meeting till 7, you could still have your opportunity to speak. And I suspect, I think by state law we had to have opportunity for comment before consent. I would suspect, and Chuck will probably agree with me, that most of them are going to wait till the end. I'll go along with it. As long as it's where I said.
Good with that. That's my motion.
I'll second that. More discussion?
Just want to clarify that someone has to speak one or the other, right?
Correct.
It's only one time.
Chuck Hess? And he still wants to speak.
Don't talk him out of it, Chuck.
He has. He already wait a minute. You've already spoke once tonight.
That's true, but not on the I think it's a great idea. I come in cold. I'm not really ready to speak in the beginning. I'd much rather speaking later in the meeting.
Was right. Thank you, Jack. Rudlow? Thank you, sir. Lambo?
I think that's great. You want citizen input, so this is the way to do it. I compliment you on that. Only thing I would say, when you say 3 minutes, shouldn't some minutes or some meetings break it down to 2 minutes or a minute and a half, regardless of what the number of people that want to speak? You should stick to your 3 minutes, because some people prepare for that.
Thank you, sir. Okay, any more discussion? Motion?
Aye.
That's 5-0. Congratulations, Howard.
Okay, let me get to my items here.
The artificial reef.
Okay, on the, to do a little background on the Marine Advisory Committee, I had been meeting with Orr and several people Chuck Shields, Alan LaMarche, Jody Campbell, Rick Crum, Larry Tucker, BJ Pappas, and Oak Lightning Bay. The thing that's most important to me is the thing that's most important to our county, and that's fishery. And fishery basically comes to me to mean artificial reefs. And I was trying to put together a group that would work with the state in this, but we have come back with a Marine Advisory Committee, which is better. And David had a meeting with the FWC, with the OR representatives, and they came up with a proposal. I have my name on it. It pretty much mimics what I was talking about. But it's basically an advisory committee that will look at all the problems, we'll say, or all the opportunities in the marine environment. And they will make recommendations, they will hear suggestions and so forth, and they will, as a committee, they will bring things to the board that they would like to see happening. And in doing so, the people I had been meeting with, I had recommended Chuck Shields as being one, as a Marine. He would represent the marine industry because he has a large marine.
Here, are we even out, I don't want to interrupt, are we even at the point?
All this is advertised for the public here.
This is very good. Then that's it. This is a motion for a public hearing. Please excuse.
Second. Yes.
3 times tonight. My goodness. That will subtract 2 from you next time.
Oh, no. Doesn't work that way. So, I have a Marine Advisory Committee. I would support the idea as long as you include people that are not just fishermen, not just businessmen that are exploiting the ocean, but also some science managers, whatever, that are interested in sustainable use and sustainable activities. Big history of fisheries over exploitation, and without that balance, really have to have that on a committee like that.
Not at that point yet. Okay.
It's kind of odd. This is the first I've heard of this thing. I don't know why Mr. Moore hasn't bothered to talk to us. I mean, we have numerous scientific publications and peer-reviewed journals on fisheries, ranging from horseshoe crabs to rock shrimp to bulldozer lobsters and so on. Gulf Specimen holds a rock lease with the Department of Aquaculture in 52 feet of water. We have been involved in artificial reefs and studies with artificial reefs for about 40-some years. If this committee goes through, I would like to be sure that at least one member of Gulf Specimen staff be included and not excluded, as appears to be the case right now. Thank you.
Is it known how this
This is just scheduled to have a public hearing.
So what do we advertise? Why don't we have a workshop?
There's a draft ordinance.
Sorry.
Attachment 4. Board appointing 5 members to represent the following areas. Somebody from either the Panacea or the St. Mark's, Florida waterfront community. A marina operator, a recreational
Marina what,
angler.
Heather, what'd you say?
Sorry, I was looking at the line below already.
Like smooth operator?
That's right, that's how I roll. Recreation angler, diver, a fishing guide, and a marine biologist.
But the motion, I'm sorry, the motion was scheduled to advertise a public hearing. We're not approving that draft ordinance by any way, shape.
So what are we advertising?
Advertising
So that would be the template for what we would be voting on.
That is what's within the
That ordinance is our ordinance that we constructed, we made up. So we workshop that ordinance?
You reviewed the ordinance.
I've reviewed the ordinance. It's based upon, it's a standard ordinance that you guys have adopted before to appoint a committee. It's a policy decision who you want on that committee and what disciplines you want represented on that committee.
I think that's critical. That's critical. The balance, I think, on that committee is critical, and I'd like to see a workshop before that.
This is to schedule a public hearing on this.
But what Heather says, to schedule a public hearing to adopt an ordinance, and that ordinance is what we're looking at here, this draft ordinance, right? Which, Gary, where'd you make this ordinance?
Yes, it was, I had been working with before it got to this point, I had been working with the people, and because we were going to put a proposal in the Restore Act to support artificial reefs, because I think that's the most important part of our county. And it sort of went from that over to this Marine Advisory Committee.
What did you say was required by the Restore
This
Act?
is required, well, it's not Restore Act, it's FWC requires that for grant opportunities and also their assistance with this program to get through to where we can get recommendations for artificial reef plan. We have to come up with that. This board would approve that article, or that board would approve that. The committee would pass that to you guys. That's just part of the process that we have to go through with FWC to help assist us, as well as then it goes to the Army Corps of Engineers for the bottom lease approvals.
Does FWC have a model ordinance?
This was constructed in guidance with FWC.
So it was with input.
This was fully vetted.
Not necessarily their model. I mean, in other words, did they recommend 5 members?
There was no recommendation how many members. We narrowed it to 5, just from the standpoint of it's already hard enough for, especially with sunshine law, to get 5 people that can't talk to each other anymore, especially in a tight-knit community like fishing is. We're asking, that's a big thing. If we all of a sudden went to 11, that would even be more complicated.
I have no problem with the number. I have concern about the balance, and this is just being discussed here for the first time. And I think that before we go to advertise, we deserve a workshop on this. Make a motion to have a workshop on the ordinance establishing the Wakulla Marine.
I thought there's already a motion on the floor.
Call your motion.
I will accept Randy's amendment to the motion.
He's not allowed because he's chair.
You just rescind yours, Howard. You want to make the
Okay,
motion?
I'll rescind mine.
Okay, go ahead, Howard.
Yep, I'm taking mine back.
Gary will rescind his. You can go ahead and make your motion to have a workshop.
Oh, you got, mine wasn't accepted yet.
Gary just because there was already a motion on the floor.
Okay.
Now there's not. Go ahead.
Okay, so I make a motion to have a workshop on the establishment of the Marine Advisory Committee.
Got a date? On the day of a board meeting, you can make it 5 o'clock. Huh? It's for my birthday. Y'all can go ahead and bring a gift early.
That'll be your birthday present from us.
Is that all right with y'all?
November 4th at 5?
What time? At 5?
5 is what
5 o'clock.
Hour, I think, would be plenty of time. Howard, is that all right with you? Discussion? Off the motion?
Aye.
I have another one that, I think the next one, basically, requesting board to approve to schedule and advertise a public workshop regarding the Panacea Community's efforts to incorporate.
November 7th.
Pardon?
On November 7th.
November 7th.
5 p.m.
Airport one's that day, I think.
Right,
What time is
right.
that? What time's the airport one?
5. This one will follow.
Have it before it?
There's there's not going to be a board meeting on that date, so there'll be...
We have to schedule it earlier if you guys want to.
I'd prefer to get it over. 4 o'clock?
Yeah.
I'll second that. More discussion? Katie, I'm sorry, Katie says. Go ahead.
Yep, sure.
Jack Rudlow? Slacking, man.
I'm going to try not to appear before you very commonly, and as you know, I don't. But this one's pretty serious, the Gulf specimen, and I was for it, and I've looked at it, but I have to say this. Our survival is at stake. The president of Waterfronts Florida, which is Walt Dixon, looked me in the eye some months ago in front of Cherie and other people, said, we're going to, when we incorporate, we're going to finally have the rules and the laws to run you out of business and get you out of Wakulla County. We've been trying to do it for 40 years, and now we're going to have the mechanism to do it. And he was dead serious about it. And I believe it. This county, not this county commission, but other county commissions have done their best to shut us down and to run us out. I hope we've all moved past that. But I don't want to do it again with a local government of developers here that are going to sit there and use their power and have policing power and everything else to shut down an organization that has 20,000 school children a year coming through it, 200 and some schools, 1,300 scientific and educational institutions around the country, and 50 years of my life. So I am going to be opposed to incorporation. I'm sorry it's come to that, but I really believe it's a real threat, and I want you to hear this threat, because I think this threat is real. Thank you.
Howard?
So, I'm not in favor of the way this is coming forward. From what I see on their proposal is that this will be more government. We'll still be providing services for the incorporated town if that occurs, but we will have part of our revenues taken away and directed to that municipality. I think this ends up costing the citizens more. It's more government. I think it's unneeded. I think it's the tail wagging the dog. And I think it has to come forward in a different manner before I would be supporting that.
I have a lot of the same concerns you do, and I think that would be a good time to express it. Not to listen to the case.
Well, I'd like to see them come with a proposal that's more friendly to the county than what they're putting on the table right now.
I'm not going to support anything that's going to take anything away from the other taxpayers. See, I know there's South Choppy and St. Mark's out there. Anyway, this is all good things to talk about at the workshop.
In favor of the workshops, I believe we need it.
Okay. Any more discussion? Off the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, the next one is basically a resolution supporting of oysters and the oyster industry in Wakulla County.
This is the one I meant.
Okay, but anyway, it supports it's a resolution supporting oysters and the oyster industry, and it supports Tennessee Waterfront Florida Partnership as they are applying or receiving Restore Act funds allocated to Wakulla. The thing that it does not do, it does not put the county in partnership with Tennessee Waterfront's community. It allows them to go forward, apply for grants, put out their own positions, and so forth. Wakulla County is not a part of this. We do support them in their efforts, and that's the sum total of this.
There is a critical part of that we need to make sure, as Commissioner Moore was saying, it says it in the agenda item, this resolution does not commit or promise county funds or resources. Furthermore, it does not commit or promise county to participate as a partner or co-applicant in any grant funds that Panacea Waterfronts Partnership may seek on its behalf.
Here's what it boils down to.
But I want to make sure.
What this ordinance resolved, which is what it's supposed to do is resolve something, it resolves. Now therefore be it resolved that the Wakulla County Board of County Commissioners recognizes the importance of oysters and the oyster industry in Wakulla County and encourage Panacea Waterfronts Florida Partnership to pursue grant opportunities that enable, enhance, protect, and improve the long-term sustainability of the oyster population and oyster industry in Wakulla County, i.e., we like oysters. That's right. Is there a motion to approve this?
Make a motion, we approve the proposed resolution in support of oysters and the oyster industry in Wakulla County.
Second.
Second, Jack.
Good idea, all right? But I just want to use my brief time here to do you a little bit on the life history of an oyster, okay? When these spawn, and I am concerned about the oyster relay, gravely concerned, because even the smallest oysters are producing seed stock. That being said, I'm not going to say I'm opposed to it. It needs to be watched very carefully by qualified marine biologists and people with shellfish degrees and habitats to closely monitor that. But I do want to tell you, though, get back to the wetlands. If you look at a gut of an oyster, and this has been done intensively by a guy named Ed Cake a number of years ago when he was at Florida State University, and he looked at the oyster larvae and he looked at everything else, 75% of the gut was not phytoplankton and everything else, it was detritus. The detritus, meaning decaying marsh grass, leaf litter, swamp forest, other things of that sort that breaks down and gets metabolized into little particles and everything else like that, is what the oysters were chiefly eating. So when leaves and swamps from even isolated wetlands and everything else find their way to the water with swamp and overflow lands like that, that's talking about oyster food. Someday we might have Purina oyster chow, and if we do, it would be built out of wetland materials and everything else like that. I mean, the subtleties of the wetlands go on and on. I've spent a lifetime studying it, working with it, and I learn things new every day. That filtering is very valuable, but that stuff of the export going out into the marsh. After a hurricane, when you have a storm surge flush out into the marshes, it's been shown that 50% more settling of oyster larvae occurs than any other time afterwards. The nutrients flushed out of the bay, washed up into the woods, into the swamps, and all that overflow pouring out into there, breaking down, becomes the food for oysters. And that's why it's very critical that we maintain our wetlands. Thank you.
Yes?
Oh, yeah, I'm a big oyster fan. This is, what you read is great. What Jerry said is not, okay? So, it's really supporting the oyster and supporting the industry is great. The other comments were kind of committing the Restore Act funds to oysters. Now, the only one I've seen in the Restore Act funds was the oyster relay, and that's really marginal whether it's a really good idea. And so, just don't take this so far that you're committing yourself to supporting the oyster products, the oyster ideas that have come forth so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. No. Thank you. More discussion?
Yeah, I just want to be clear that, like you said, Mr. Chairman, this is basically giving support for the importance of oysters and the oyster industry. It is not endorsing any group, go in any direction such as oyster
encouraging
relay.
them.
Right, they can apply for grants that would benefit the oysters and the oysters.
Right.
I am not supporting at this point in time the science of the oyster.
Are voting to support the oysters, so.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? All for the motion?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Ralph?
At a previous meeting, we talked about this item and agreed to bring it
back. Our current charter requires that we stand up a charter review commission of 15 citizens to review the charter and to review all aspects of the charter. Once that commission is in place, they have up to a year to report that information back. It comes back to us. Whatever 10 of them agree comes back to us. It doesn't come back as a recommendation for approval or denial. It comes back, and at that point, if 10 people are in agreement that it needs to stay the same or needs to change or whatever the recommendation is, then it would go to a vote of the citizens to accept or reject their recommendation. So in accordance with our charter, I'm just recommending that we go ahead and stand that up now. My motion is to direct staff to start that process to initiate the Charter Review Commission. Second?
Second time.
Okay.
Okay. So the question is, go ahead, and why? Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this. This makes me think of ex-husbands who would say to their soon-to-be ex-wives, honey, do you believe me or do you believe your eyes? And I'm somebody who believes her eyes. And what my eyes see here is that you're spending an awful lot of time trying to gut these wetland protections. Why, I do not know, except I really do know, because my eyes tell me you want to get rid of the wetlands ordinance so that developers can come in and develop closer to the wetlands or in the wetlands, and some of you maybe even make more money, whatever it is. And that's the flat fact. And you can do all the foul la-di-da you want to about all these great reasons for doing it, but that's the reason for doing it. This charter, speeding it up, isn't there an automatic trigger for the charter review anyway? And this is putting it on steroids here. And why would you want to do that? If you get to the point to where you can abolish this charter, then you get rid of the citizens' right to put something on the ballot. That referendum provision, that goes out the window. So you're in control and the citizens are out in the cold. Not a good idea. As I've gone door to door talking to people about the wetlands, they don't like it that you won't let the people vote on the wetlands. And that's just flat out true. Knock on doors and they don't like it. This is the United States of America, and everybody has the right to vote. And you're going to try to get rid of it. Sounds terribly dictatorial to me. But at the same time, you've got real problems in the county. You've got beaches that are messed up that are going to kill tourism. How much does that have to be beaten into the heads of people here? And you've put flooding on the map for Wakulla County. Do something about that. How much of this agenda tonight was spent on the polluted water in the beaches and the flooding problem in this county? Zip-doo-dah. And instead you want to, get a charter review so you can shut up the citizens? Not a good idea. Not good for you and not good for Wakulla County.
Yes. Last word tonight, Chuck. It is kind of early for the Charter Review Committee, but I'm really concerned about the balance in who all's represented on that committee. I don't know. I'm not sure how the 15 members are set out, but I would like to have all aspects of our community represented when you develop that committee. Thank you.
No. You got it. So, as Commissioner Thomas included in his background material, you have to establish that no later than July 1, 2015. So the question is, why not no later than July 1 of 2014? Still ahead of schedule. Gives another 2 years, if necessary, to work things out as far as what changes can and cannot, or should or should not be made, recommendations that come to the board. I had a sense that there was a anti-charter sentiment amongst certain of our board members, and I think there's also misinformation that's being put out there in the county concerning the charter. I was at one meeting where someone was very vocal, told about all of our budget problems and how this is all related to the charter. That's nonsense. Nonsense. Pure fiction. I was at a rec board meeting.
There wasn't someone on this.
Correct. But when we got to discussing on this board, the 30% it takes to have our citizens get something on the ballot, and they will obtain the 30% on this referendum. But it's 3 times as hard as the next highest county in the state of Florida. 3 times. And yes, it was pointed out that I voted for that. And yes, that was part of the compromise that led to give the citizens an opportunity to have a charter and to have referendums. So I'm coming from the position that we need to start the process. We don't need to start it now. We can start it a year early than we have to. It gives us 2 years to work on it. I think we all learn more. You know, this board, as a board, has not sat for a complete year. Here we are, throwing out wetlands, local controls, and wanting to redo the charter. I think we need some more time to get some more time under our feet as a board. Thank you.
According to I'm looking at, do the charter review committee now, it would be on the November 2014 ballot, correct? Goal is, I think.
Well, the committee could come back and say, leave it as is.
I understand, but if they have a change, wanting to get it on the 2014 ballot, which is 9 months away from July 1st, 2015. The next time it could be on the ballot would be November of 2016, correct? This is the closest date to July 1st, 2015. Have to do that. You said before this time you shall start, and then within a year you've got to finish. But I think it does meet the spirit of it, that it's within 9 months of the date that is mentioned. If they come back with any changes, that's why I'm not.
And I'd like to say one more thing. Right now, there's going to be a referendum on that 2014 November general election. And I suggest, if we really want to see the complexion and how the citizens want to vote, let that stand alone and not confuse it with any other referendums or charter changes.
Chairman, if I may, let me be clear that I'm not proposing a change to the charter. And I'm not proposing that we eliminate the charter, regardless of what Ms. Peck says, lives in the wetlands. I'm not proposing that. Our charter, as adopted and as voted by the citizens of this county, requires a charter review commission. That's all I'm asking is let's follow the rules. Let's follow what was put in place, what the citizens voted for. Commissioner Kessler, you questioned at least one item in the charter, and you said that you didn't agree with the charter as it currently stands. You may get your wish if we do the Charter Review Commission. That may be the outcome of that. As best I can tell, you're the only commissioner that has questioned the charter as it currently stands. And so it seems to me that you wanted a change, and now here's an opportunity for a change. We wanted the citizens to speak. Here's an opportunity for the citizens to speak. They can look at the charter in its entirety. They may say it's perfectly fine. They may agree that you need to drop the threshold to 10% as you recommended. I keep hearing that the citizens need to speak. This is in our charter. This is an opportunity for the citizens to speak. And whatever the outcome, we do not have the authority to approve it nor deny it. It's going to go straight to the ballot. And so all this does is executes what's already in the charter.
So I think you might stand corrected. I'm not the only one that brought up issues with the present charter.
I'd like to hear that.
Okay, so I think our chairman had brought up the issue of nonpartisan elections.
Fair enough.
Okay. So So, and I'm not saying that, look, this is
That may come out as well. That's a good discussion for the committee to...
And I think in the spirit, if this was, if there was nothing else going on here, if there was not this wetlands issue, and there was nothing else going on, I'd say, fine, let's start the process. But I look at this as potentially a diversion, a method to maybe confuse people with several items on that 2014 ballot.
Side, taking your side. Howard's advocate. Got it off your election. Very motivated electorate. Correct? Works to your advantage to hold it then. It's not a presidential year election. I'll be up, Jerry's up. Lord knows I get a bunch of people.
Well, if you all didn't push the elimination of the wetlands, okay, and just put it off, we wouldn't be in this situation. So, yeah, we're responding where the citizens, myself and the citizens, are responding to the board's elimination of our local wetlands protections. And so,
have this.
but you set the timetable. It wasn't the citizens that came forward and said, let's have a referendum. You set the timetable by saying, we're going to eliminate it, and we're starting the process now.
Discussion on this item? Motion?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1. Heather, you got anything? David?
Got two things, quickly. We just wrapped up the end of our fiscal year, and one of the things we've been working on since day one was the cash position of the general fund county. It was in the past, over the past at least 5 years plus. Past that, we've yet to find out how far. The county has always operated in the red during the month of October.
We borrowed money from other funds.
Borrowed money from other funds for the first time.
Our bill.
First time in those many years, if not longer, the county will actually not go into the red and not dip into any funds in at least through the month of October and November.
Because we're building our reserve up.
Because, well, we built our reserve up, but mainly we also have worked on our cash position to be able to do that. So for the first time, we're not dipping into our reserves or our savings account, which is very good, and that means that all of us together have worked well to be physically responsible, and we've come a long way. That's a big step, huge step. Second was want to make sure that everyone tunes into our television channel. We're continually adding more and more features to that. We're hoping to be in the future. We're going to add some music, so at 3 o'clock in the morning you want to listen to some soothing music and read about county items.
What you need to put on there...
That's actually my request.
You need to put a continuous loop of the Jerry Moore and Lynn Arts dance they did that.
That is coming. That's a featured art. That is featured on there. No joke. We're hoping in the future to be adding alerts during emergencies and et cetera, and leading up to like a hurricane or whatever. So we're continually improving that. We're trying to do it without spending any money. So what you're seeing up there, if it seems to be, we're doing a really good job. Staff's doing it, but understand they're doing it with zero capital. So
they're doing a handful.
Exactly.
We would have been in an even better position had we not had oil under this building. We'd have been another.
We'd have been a lot better position. Yes,
yeah, we had $250,000 go to repair Walker Road out in Shell Point. If that road hadn't have fallen in.
This and repairing the roof on the sheriff's department. Those are two. But that's what we got reserves for. And that's what they be used for. So I mean that's a good thing. I'm just glad we got it.
Can we have a vote to when we need reserve not to use them?
Anyway, that's all I've got.
Ralph, you got anything?
Yeah, one thing. I'd actually like to thank Commissioner Kessler. He tabled an item tonight, and And I looked at that item, and when I first looked at it, I thought, well, that's a no-brainer. That'll be a 5-0 vote. We all love Wakulla Springs, so there shouldn't be any problem with that. The item was to nominate Wakulla Springs State Park as a wetlands of international importance under the Ramsar Convention of Wetlands. I didn't know too much about the Ramsar Convention of Wetlands, so in preparation of this, I started doing some research, and as I got into it, I thought, well, maybe this is not a good idea. Maybe this is a terrible idea, and so I appreciate you tabling it and give us all a little more time to figure out if it's a good idea or if it's a bad idea. A lot of this stuff is evolving. The information that I found, and I gave Katie a link to a web page, if she'll pull that up just so you guys will all have access to it, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But this is a document that I found on the Ramsar website, so it's not about them, it's by them. It's something that they produced. It's called Agenda 21 and the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. Submission to the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs for the review and assessment of implementation of Agenda 21 and the program for the further implementation of Agenda 21. Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to point out, I'm not going to get into all the details of Agenda 21, but I just urge everyone to just take a look at it and see if it's something that you agree with or disagree with. But the point I do want to make in this is their document on their website clearly states that they are trying to use this agenda of the Ramsar Convention to further Agenda 21. One couple quotes. The World Summit should be urged to develop a major Agenda 21 training initiative, a one-stop shop for training in sustainable development. That's the word you like, Terry. The World Summit should be urged to recognize the importance of states protecting and utilizing their freshwater and coastal wetlands resource wisely, using the vehicle of the list of wetlands of international importance, which was what was proposed before it was tabled tonight. Countries are encouraged to use their sovereign right of designating key wetland sites as wetlands of international importance as a tool to assist sustainable development and biodiversity conservation aspirations. As advocated by the Ramsar Convention, these wetlands can become a part of a global network of demonstration sites for sustainable development, while at the same time providing a focus for national actions to implement Agenda 21 in a very tangible and demonstratable way. So I'm not going to go any further, but it's 85 pages here, and there's many, many more documents that just confirm that these guys are very much on board with Agenda 21. So that's all I ask. Everyone take a look and figure out if you like that or if you don't like that.
In talking about that, somebody sent me an email on it. I especially like the point, and I dislike the point. Let's make sure. It says that